All right, picture the Philippines for a second. Close your eyes if you have, well, unless you're driving, please don't do that.
Right.
What comes to mind? Maybe, pristine white sand beaches in Palawan, or maybe that chaotic, humid energy of Manila traffic. Or maybe, and this is the big one, you think of the people, the nurses, the engineers, the domestic workers who seem to be staffing the infrastructure of like every major city on Earth.
It's a nation that, for better or worse, is often defined by what it exports. Its labor, its fruit, and yeah, it's incredibly friendly smiles.
Exactly. It's either the tropical vacation spot or the world's workforce. But today, for this deep dive, we're looking at a source that wants to take that mental image and just completely flip the script.
It's a powerful text.
It is. We're looking at a piece titled Imagining a Sending Nation, and it poses a provocation that, I have to admit, it really stopped me in my tracks.
It's definitely a paradigm shift. It forces you to look at a familiar picture through a completely different lens.
The source asks this: what if the Philippines isn't just a supplier of labor? What if it's actually a sleeping giant of global Christianity?
And that is where the tension lies. Because, look, the Philippines has been celebrated for a long time as a believing nation.
For sure.
You have 500 years of Christian history, churches that are absolutely packed every Sunday, just passionate worship. By all the visible metrics, attendance, enthusiasm, history, the faith is alive and well.
But the source throws this really haunting question right in our faces. It asks, are we merely a believing nation, or could we become a sending nation?
And that's the core distinction right there. A believing nation, it kind of consumes the faith, it preserves it, it's all internal.
Right.
But a sending nation distributes it. And the argument here is that the Philippines is uniquely positioned, perhaps more than any other nation right now, to become the next great engine of global missions.
So to shift from being a mission field where people come to the Philippines
to a mission force where Filipinos are the ones going out.
And the stakes here are huge, right? This isn't just about one country deciding to be more active. The source talks about this massive geopolitical shift in Christianity. Can you set the stage for us on that? What's happening on the global map?
It is historic. For the last few centuries, the center of gravity for Christianity was the global north, Europe and North America. They were the senders. They had the money, the institutions, the seminaries. But if you look at the data now, we are seeing severe missionary fatigue in the West.
Meaning what exactly? Just running out of steam.
It's a combination of things. Secularization, for one, but also comfort. I mean, you walk through Europe now and you see these beautiful cathedrals. They're essentially museums. They're empty.
Yeah.
Church attendance is plummeting in the U.S.
Yeah.
The pipeline of young missionaries from the West is, well, it's drying up and aging out.
Meanwhile, you look at the global South.
Yeah. Exactly. Asia, Africa, Latin America. The faith is exploding there.
Yeah.
You have mega churches, intense, vibrant movements in places that used to be considered, pagan. The center of Christianity has moved south and east.
So the baton is effectively being passed.
The source calls it a providential setup. The demographics have shifted. The question is, now that the center has moved, who is going to pick up the mantle of taking that faith to the rest of the world? Because the West is tapping out.
So why the Philippines? I mean, I get that it's a Christian nation in Asia, but is that enough to lead a global movement? Why not South Korea? Why not Brazil?
That's the YS factor.
Yeah.
And the source breaks it down into these specific ingredients that seem to have been, cooking for centuries.
Yeah.
First, you've got demographics.
Okay.
The Philippines has a very young population. The median age is something like 24 or 25. Compare that to Japan or parts of Europe where the population is rapidly graying.
Which is huge for longevity in the field. I mean, you want people who can give 20, 30, 40 years to the work.
Precisely. Then you have culture. Filipinos are deeply relational and linguistically adaptable. Their English proficiency is a massive strategic advantage. It opens doors globally that are closed to many other nations in the global South.
And the faith history itself.
Right, there's a resilience there,
Yeah.
shaped by both suffering and joy. It's a faith that hasn't been, intellectualized to death. It's lived.
The source brings up this theological idea of being blessed to be a blessing from Genesis 12.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The argument is that the Philippines has received the gospel for centuries. It's been the recipient. But theology says you aren't blessed just to hoard it. You're blessed to pass it on.
So the theology has to shift from
preservation,
Yeah.
just keeping our churches full to distribution, to emptying them out for the sake of the world.
Okay, I want to drill down on this diaspora concept because this is where the article really shifts from theory to reality. We all know about OFWs overseas Filipino workers. It's a huge part of the economy.
It is.
But usually when we talk about this, it's a story of sacrifice, families separated, brain drain, economic struggle. It's heavy.
It is heavy. And the source doesn't minimize that pain at all. It doesn't pretend that migration is easy. But it asks us to look at the map. You have millions of Filipinos in the Middle East, in Europe, North America. The source calls this God's strategic scattering.
I have to push back on that a little. Calling forced migration, because let's be honest, most people leave because they have to feed their families. Calling that a divine strategy feels a bit convenient, like we're spiritualizing a tragedy.
That's a very valid critique, and it's one the source anticipates.
Yes.
It's not saying God caused the poverty to make them leave. It's not glorifying the economic hardship.
Okay.
But it is applying what you might call a Joseph theology, the biblical story where Joseph is sold into slavery. Terrible event. But later he says, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good.
So the argument is that the circumstance is economic necessity, but the outcome can be missional.
Correct. The comparison the author makes is to Acts 8 in the Bible. When the early church was persecuted in Jerusalem, they didn't leave because they wanted a vacation or a promotion. They left to survive.
Right.
It looked like a disaster. But the text says those who were scattered went about preaching the word. They didn't stop being believers just because they're refugees.
So practically speaking, how does this work? Because a domestic helper in Hong Kong or a construction worker in Dubai isn't exactly a missionary in the traditional sense.
And that's the beauty of it. Think about the tactical reality. A traditional Western missionary, let's say a guy with a theology degree from Texas, he can't just walk into Saudi Arabia or certain parts of closed Asia and start a church.
No way.
He'll be stopped at the border. He has no reason to be there.
Right, the closed-door countries.
But a Filipino engineer, a domestic worker, a nurse, they're already there. They have the visas. They have access to the kitchens, the construction sites, the hospitals. The source argues they are the ultimate undercover agents. Not because they're hiding their faith, but because their job gives them a legitimate reason to be there.
It reframes the whole brain drain idea into, like, a faith gain.
A global distribution system. And the source gives these incredible anecdotes. Nannies in the Middle East holding Bible studies in the kitchen while the employers are out.
Wow.
Nurses in the UK who are known for their bedside manner, praying with patients in a way that opens spiritual doors a local doctor might never open.
It reminds me of that term tent making you see in the theological circles.
Yes, referencing the Apostle Paul. He made tents to fund his travels. These workers aren't full-time missionaries on a church payroll. Their vocation is their vehicle. And frankly, in the modern world, that is so much more effective than knocking on doors with a tract.
So we've got the people there, but the source also talks about how they are there. It mentions these cultural superpowers. And again, I worry about stereotyping, but the source argues these are actual tactical assets.
They call them missional assets. Take adaptability. The source highlights how Filipinos have this incredible ability to fit into different cultures without demanding the environment change for them.
Right.
A Western missionary often brings their culture with them, their way of doing church, their leadership style, their expectations of efficiency.
That whole we do it this way back home thing.
Exactly. Whereas a Filipino tends to adapt, to blend, to serve. Then there's relational warmth or hospitality. It's instinctive. And in a lonely world, and the Western world is incredibly lonely right now, that warmth is magnetic.
Yeah, that opens doors.
It opens doors for the gospel that logic or argumentation never could.
There was one other trait the source mentioned that felt a bit heavier, but crucial: resilience.
Yes, this is perhaps the most critical one. The source notes that Filipinos are molded by hardship typhoons, economic struggles, political instability. This actually makes them uniquely suited for the rigors of mission work.
Because mission work isn't glamorous.
It is uncomfortable. It is chaotic. The source points out, and this is a bit of a jab at the West, but it's fair, that Western missionaries often struggle when the air conditioning breaks or the schedule falls apart.
They're not used to it.
They're used to suffering. But Filipinos, they have a theology of endurance. They know how to find joy in the midst of lack. That makes them unstoppable in the field.
That is such a powerful reframing of suffering. It's not just a tragedy, it's training.
It's the grit required for the task.
So we've established that the current workforce, the OFWs, are this kind of accidental missionary force. They're there because of economics, but God is using them.
Right.
But the source argues we can't just rely on accidental migration forever. To make this sustainable, we have to look at who comes next. And that brings us to a group the church has largely sidelined: the youth.
This section was fascinating because it calls out a failure of collective imagination.
What does that mean?
Well, we keep telling young people, you are the church of tomorrow. Or we train them just to keep the local church running. Play guitar on Sunday, set up the chairs, run the PowerPoint.
Chief small roles.
Exactly. We treat them like interns for the real adults.
Right.
And the source argues that this is dangerous because youth are naturally looking for a cause. They are wired for risk. If the church doesn't give them a dangerous, compelling vision for sacrificial purpose, they will lose them to lesser narratives.
Like just chasing a career or fame or money.
Exactly. They'll get bored with safe Christianity. The source points to biblical examples like Timothy, Jeremiah, David. God consistently uses the young, not when they are ready by human standards, but when they are willing.
There's a really interesting point here about digital fluency, too. And it wasn't just the usual, oh, kids love TikTok thing.
No, it went deeper. It argues that their connectivity isn't a distraction. It's a tool for global mission. I mean, think about it. A young person in Manila can mentor a peer in London or Tokyo via video call. They can build cross-cultural friendships online before they even get on a plane.
So they can be missionaries from their bedrooms.
In a sense, yes. But it also prepares them. The source argues we need to stop seeing their digital lives as a waste of time and start seeing it as a new mission field. They speak the language of the internet, which is the global language now.
So the call is to invite them into an adventure, to say, we don't just need you to usher, we need you to change the world.
To give them a compelling vision for sacrificial purpose. That's the phrase that really stuck with me.
Okay, so we have the ingredients, we have the demographics, the culture, the accidental army of OFWs, and the potential army of youth. But the source says there's a massive pivot that needs to happen in the local church for this to actually work. A shift in metrics.
This is the hard part for pastors. This is where the rubber meets the road. We are addicted to seating capacity.
How many butts are in the seats on Sunday?
Right. We measure success by attendance, by how big our building is, by how slick our programs are. The source demands a new metric, sending capacity.
Who are we sending next?
It completely changes how you view your congregation.
But help me understand this theology of decrease the source talks about, because that sounds counterintuitive.
Yeah.
No organization wants to decrease.
Think of it like a sports team. A believing mindset or a seating capacity mindset is hoarding your best players so you win every local game.
Yeah.
The best worship leader, the best youth pastor, the best administrators, all staying right here.
Because you want to have the best show in town.
Exactly. But a sending mindset is like being a farm league or an academy. Your goal is to train players so they get drafted to the big leagues. You technically lose the player. They leave your team. But the sport as a whole wins.
So the local church takes a hit.
It hurts. And the source acknowledges that. It hurts to lose your best worship leader to a mission field in Africa. It hurts to send your dynamic youth pastor to plant a church in a neighboring country. It requires a theology of decrease, being willing to look smaller locally to have a bigger impact globally.
That is a tough sell for a pastor who has bills to pay and a building fund to manage.
It is. But the source points to the Antioch model from Acts 13. The church in Antioch had these two superstars, Paul and Barnabas, and the Holy Spirit said, set them apart for the work I have called them to.
Right.
And what did the church do? They fasted, prayed, and sent them away. They didn't hoard them.
If they had hoarded them, we wouldn't have half the New Testament.
Exactly. And the source suggests this doesn't have to be a massive exodus all at once. It proposes a goal of incremental sending.
I liked this part. It felt really doable.
Yeah. What if a church committed to sending just 5 to 10 people a year? It seems small. But over 10 or 20 years, that creates a massive exponential ripple effect. You're seeding the world with gospel carriers.
But here is my worry. Passion is great. Vision is great. But we can't just hype everyone up at a conference and put them on a plane. That sounds like a recipe for burnout or disaster.
You are absolutely right. And the source devotes a whole section to structure and sustainability. It emphasizes vision without systems collapses. You need a pipeline.
Okay, so what does that pipeline look like?
It starts with discernment.
Yeah.
Helping people actually hear the call, not just, emotional hype. Then training, and not just Bible knowledge. They need cross-cultural intelligence. They need emotional resilience training.
Because the reality is they're going to be lonely.
Incredibly lonely.
Yeah.
They're going to face spiritual warfare. They're going to be in cultures where they don't know the rules.
So that leads to the third part, care.
Care is non-negotiable. Supporting them financially, yes, but also emotionally. The source warns that if we send people without a robust care, structure, pastoral care, mental health support, we're just sending them to get wounded. We're just throwing bodies at a problem rather than sending supported ambassadors.
So sending can't just be a department in the church basement that one person runs part-time.
No, it has to be an identity. The Force says we need to move from sending being a department to being the very identity of the people. The whole church sees itself as a launch pad. Every member asks, am I going or am I sending? There is no third option.
So where does this leave us? We've looked at the history, the culture, the potential, the cost.
We're at a crossroads. The Philippines has the numbers. It has the faith. It has the global footprint. The only missing piece, really, is the intentional choice to send.
It's about flip-flopping that mindset from we are the mission field to we are the missionaries.
And the source ends with this provocative thought. The future is not waiting for plans. It is waiting for the sent. God is already moving. The diaspora is already there. The question isn't, will God use the Philippines? God is using the Philippines. The question is, will the Philippines recognize they are already being used?
Will they step into that identity on purpose?
Exactly. Will they embrace the discomfort? Because ultimately, a sending nation isn't defined by how rich or powerful it is. It's defined by a collective willingness to go where it is uncomfortable for the sake of the gospel.
And that is a challenge not just for a nation, but for every single listener. Whether you are Filipino or not, that principle holds. Are you hoarding your faith, or are you ready to be sent, whether that's across the ocean or across the street?
That's the question.
We'll leave you with that to chew on. Thanks for diving deep with us.
Until next time.